Bonjour tous et toutes. Bienvenue. And that's the end of my French for the morning. Lucky you. For those of you who aren't aware, though, we are doing simultaneous translation, so there's headsets just out in the lobby. Some of the presentations will be in French, some will be in English, so feel free to grab a set of headsets.
Il y a la traduction simultanée. Si vous avez besoin d'un headset, ils sont à l'extérieur. Tu vois le monsieur en arrière avec son headset. Tu faut lui donnes une pièce d'identité. C'est tout.
So my name is Shannon Heblathwaite, and I'm from the Department of Applied Human Sciences and the director of Engage, Concordia Center for Research on Aging.
And I'm Kim Sawchuk. I'm a professor in the Department of Communication Studies here, a member of Engage, and the director of Aging Communication Technologies, experiencing a digital world in later life.
Just a quick show of hands for an early morning stretch. How many of you were here yesterday? Oh, many. Okay, so we'll keep this a little shorter. We won't give you the full stand-up comedy for the morning. But we'd like to welcome you to Bold, and we begin by acknowledging that Concordia University is located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Kanien'kehá:ka Nation is recognized as the custodians of the land and waters on which we gather today. Tiohtià:ke, or Montreal, is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today it's home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections to the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community.
So it's our great pleasure to welcome you to the second day of Bold, which we're hoping will transform our university into a space of continual engagement for people of all ages, and also as a space where, as we ourselves are aging, we can continue to invite older adults into the university to help us envision a just and inclusive future for our cities. So we see Bold as a first step towards an opening to ongoing discussions. I always think that this kind of work is kind of like the dishes in my house. It's never done. You just have to keep doing it.
I had a panic attack about the dishes the other morning, so it's funny you said that. I'm very pleased first to welcome Christophe Guy this morning, who is the Vice President of Research and Graduate Studies here at Concordia, to give some opening remarks.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I will do my opening speech in French, so if you want to put your translations. Bonjour à toutes et à tous et bienvenue à Concordia. Mon nom est Christophe Guy et je suis vice-recteur à la recherche et aux études supérieures ici à l'université. Je suis très heureux de vous voir en grand nombre ce matin pour la deuxième journée de la conférence Bold, Vieillir dans notre ville. L'objectif global de la conférence Bold est d'explorer ensemble ce que signifie faire preuve d'audace et soutenir nos aînés, d'un point de vue pluridisciplinaire, intergénérationnel et multisectoriel. Le Canada compte aujourd'hui 37 millions d'habitants, chiffre qui devrait atteindre les 45 millions en 2059. Et selon les prévisions, les personnes âgées représenteront alors un peu plus de 25% de la population. Ici à Montréal, dans 40 ans, ce groupe comptera plus d'un demi-million de personnes. À Concordia, des chercheuses et des chercheurs de diverses disciplines examinent ce que signifie le fait de créer des conditions d'accessibilité et d'inclusion dans les villes. Il favorise également les échanges avec des citoyennes et des citoyens de toutes les générations sur divers sujets, comme le respect des aînés dans le discours médiatique, les mouvements de défense du droit au logement, la participation des aînés à la politique et aux mouvements militants, ainsi que le vieillissement et l'innovation dans les arts. Par des initiatives comme la conférence BOLD, qui tisse des liens entre chercheurs, praticiens, décideurs et citoyens, Concordia continue de s'affirmer à titre d'université de nouvelle génération en donnant à notre collectivité les moyens de promouvoir la créativité et stimuler l'innovation culturelle, des thèmes qui sont des pierres angulaires de la mission de notre institution. Peut-être êtes-vous déjà passé à Espace 4, situé ici même, dans ce pavillon. Sinon, allez-y aujourd'hui. On y présente l'exposition BOLD, qui comprend des œuvres d'art, ainsi que des innovations technologiques, dont des balados et récits numériques axés sur les aînés. Une foule d'autres activités sont au programme cette semaine et la semaine prochaine, dont des ateliers intergénérationnels de graffiti et des ruches d'art éphémères. Je tiens à remercier nos partenaires d'avoir appuyé ces activités. Je remercie également les membres du projet ACT, de Concordia et du centre de recherche Engage, qui œuvrent avec ardeur à l'organisation de ce formidable événement. Le programme aujourd'hui est d'ailleurs de très grande qualité. Je vous souhaite donc une journée des plus enrichissantes à Concordia. Merci et bonne journée.
Just a quick thanks as well to all of the staff and the students at Concordia who have worked so hard to make today a success. Just a little heads up, if anybody's needing assistance with anything, the folks are, Ash is going to model, the folks are wearing orange polka dot scarves, wristbands, whatever. You can grab any one of them and ask them for help, or Kim and I didn't get a scarf or a headband, but we're here also and happy to help. One more note of thanks to our funders, without whom we wouldn't be here today. The Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, the Office of the Vice President of Research and Graduate Studies, the Faculty of Arts and Science, as well as the Luc Maurice Foundation, who's helped to support our event today.
So, Shannon? We'd like to also invite you, if you haven't had a chance, to go to the Orange Tent. And if you want to participate in the podcast project, you have something to say. Nora Breck, one of our research assistants, is sitting under the fairy lights, waiting for a discussion.
And all the exhibits in the fourth space are on today. At noon on your break, please get nourished, but also, we have an intergenerational singing group happening with folks who are living with dementia and their care partners and children who are going to be, we're going to be all singing together in the fourth space. So that's at 12:30 today. We invite you to join us for that.
I'll do my best not to hurt anybody's ears. So, in closing, we'd just like to say BOLD is conceived with the idea that aging and life is full of challenges, and that as we age and as we live, great boldness is required. So be brave.
Be brazen.
Do not be beaten even when you feel broken.
Stay bad.
Grow old.
Be bold.
We've adopted this as our mantra. So welcome, everybody.
So I'll just invite Annette Liebing to come to the stage, as well as all the panelists, for our first panel today, which is Aging and Our Lived Environments.
I will sing a song. So, good morning, bonjour, welcome to this beautiful panel, Aging in Our Lived Environments. We will have three speeches, and Afterwards, we will open to a short discussion among the researchers, and then we will open to the wider audience. Vous pouvez parler en français ou en anglais. Donc, vive Montréal, vive le Québec. The first two speakers are Professor Satoshi Ikeda from Concordia University. He's an associate professor in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, my colleague. He's engaging in community action in NDG and on Concordia campus to promote sustainable futures following the idea of social economy. And as an aging person, which is relative, he is keen on promoting home share and co-housing for intergenerational engagement to break isolation for both young and old people. Maybe I should add that I'm German, so you don't wonder about my accent. And together with Professor Ikeda, we will have Cecilia Marangon. She's a graduate international student in journalism at Concordia University here. She also works for the HOPO CSU Off-Campus Housing and Job Resource Center assistant, and is one of the coordinator of the Chez, nous homeshare project. So thank you very much and welcome.
You hear me? Well, good morning and thank you for being here. This is our presentation about our homeshare program that we decide to call Chez, nous. I apologize because I am going to speak in English because my French is terrible and I don't want to ruin your morning. So, how many of you are familiar with the idea of homeshare in general? Okay, wow, good. Usually it's not this many, if I can say. So let's set a little bit, just 3 words for the rest of the conversation. Homeshare is the contract, the project itself, and the idea. An home holder is a person who has a spare room. In our idea is a senior who has an extra room in his or her apartment or house that it's not used at the moment, while the homeshare is, in our idea, a student, that's what we are promoting as start, who needs actually an accommodation. And so would probably, in our idea, entering in the homeshare and being the home sharer, so the person living with the senior. One of the questions can be why, mainly, and we have a little bit of explanation. The basic idea is putting together 2 people that need somehow each other, gathering together and creating new connections. The point is not just another rental agreement, but it's building a different kind of cohabitation between 2 generations, seniors and students. Both categories are having really hard times in the actual housing market, if I can say from professional experience. So we think it's really important, and there are many benefits that this kind of agreement can bring, and we are going to go into those right now. Oops. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So the benefits that I was talking about are mainly on the senior side, for example, aging in place. This is not something stereotypical idea we have. I have a personal experience with my family. I'm Italian, and for us, the idea of leaving your house at some point because you are too old is just wrong. It doesn't exist. It's your house. And being maybe alone and with a pension that maybe cannot help you in paying all the expenses you have can be one of the reasons why seniors move to caregiving facilities, other kind of facilities. But we believe that living in your place helps you living better and living longer, which is the 2 most important parts. Companionship, because being alone is not nice for anyone, whether you are 20s or you are in your 80s. Being alone is not a good option. In this way, we promote companionship in the meaning of creating a relationship between the senior and the student involved in this kind of agreement. So not merely economical side, but building something, building bridges between generations. And of course, also cultural exchange, because whether you are from Montreal or from another place, your experience and your current culture is surely different from the one that someone in your grandparents' age have and the experience they made. It's really different and really interesting to put all these stories and experience together, we think. And we have examples. So it's not just a crazy idea coming up from professors at Concordia and students working in it, but there are examples. One is in Vermont, homeshare Vermont. There's Symbiosis at McMaster University, and also Toronto homeshare that it's working pretty well right now and has been recently funded with grants for after the pilot project. So it's going to be real and work for real. There are other examples around the world. In Europe, there are many homeshare projects that are raising up and they are working. So we wanted to be present, or at least try to have one, also in Montreal, starting from Concordia universities. So what we did so far before starting with this, we actually spoke with students. We collected so far more than 200 surveys. And from the responses we had, more than the 70% of students here at Concordia will be interested or really interested in this kind of new housing situation. So sharing their spaces with a senior in his or her apartment or house, giving back help, presence, companionship, friendship, and getting back, again, experience, a story, friendship and companionship.
Okay. So we started this about a year ago, and now we are in some kind of a, how to say, moment to contemplate. Why? Because we found two major problems. One is to recruit seniors. Why? Because the seniors may not want to have a stranger coming in and then leaving and then making a new connection again and so forth. So I think we cannot really recruit many senior people. We've done many workshops, but we couldn't really recruit. And many people have their single apartment and living comfortably. And those people who are living in their large home that they raise their kids, they are ready to move into a facilities. And so I think it's not really easy for people to really just think about home share at this moment. And then the student side, there is a difficulty in breaking the 1-year lease because students want to secure the place because they want to concentrate on studies. But recruiting the students into the home share arrangement in the middle of the year is rather difficult. So to break this, I thought that we can really start with the pilot project. And I'm happy to report that we have the first case. Retired Concordia business professor is ready to accommodate. So this is our first case. And then once we have a good start, then we can really recruit, spreading out the words. And I think Concordia retired professors are very good candidates. And then their friends and then so forth to really expand the circle. And for the student side, we would start recruiting with the current students for next year. Would you really think about it? And then I want to really have all sorts of activities to two groups to meet. Why you cannot really ask them to enter into cohabitation arrangement right off the bat. You have to have this engagement first. So I'm thinking, for example, interaction cafe, gathering things, and then we can go to different senior organizations, and then send our students to really familiarize themselves. And we can have a speed dating, maybe, or we can have a trial visits first, students going to multiple seniors' homes to really see how it would be like living in the space. And then we can have a trial stay, like weekend, one night, and then see how it goes. And then we can have different arrangement until the good match is found. And I think this is a easy way of easing into the arrangement. But all these things, I think, leads me to several important lessons that I learned from conference yesterday included. I learned many things, but one important thing is that we have to create a different category of relationship. Once we had kins, our family, and if you go to like a Middle Eastern people, they still have the intergeneration in their own home. Now, for those people who are not new to Canada, this has been broken in a way because kids move away and grandchildren don't come to Montreal to study at Concordia. So you are left alone. But then you have friendship. In between, I want to really create a kin friendship or cohabitantship or anything that is in between. Now, good thing about this is that you may be able to get all kind of a support systems from the family relations, but you don't need to worry about like your sons and daughters. Like, that's a pain sometimes. The family is painful. I'm originally from Japan, and Japanese studies really reveal very interesting aspect that seniors living alone live longer than seniors living with the family. How come? But this is similar to the Italian mother situation. Like, keeping the distance is a very important strategy for Italians to live a long life. Yet, yeah, but there are many kind of gerontology studies or longevity studies that community connections is the key. Good exercise and community connections and good food, but then good food is everybody's different. So you can eat meat or you can eat tofu or whatever, but community living is very important. So I want to really promote this idea and starting with the students and then putting them into a different situation so that they train themselves to be the cohabitant. And then in their life trajectory, I want everybody to have cohabitation as a part of the housing arrangement possibilities. And if you really have that from the beginning to imagine how I'm going to end up, the Swedish study revealed that 2/3 of the Swedish seniors live and then die in their home. This is a remarkable statistic because in Canada, majority of the seniors live in the institutions or hospitals out of their home. Living in their home is very important for happiness. And so I want to really promote this idea of home share and other cohabitation. And that is going to be a very important trajectory to imagine your housing situation, to keep your life happier and more fulfilled. And you can really imagine that what we need as a challenge to our society and to ourselves is open up your mind, break out isolation, and try not to think that your life is complete by yourself. No, you have to have community of like-minded people living together. And next presentation, Janet is exactly doing that.
So if you have questions, please keep them until the end of the session. Maybe I should just add that I read the same study about family makes you live not longer, but there should be a nuance. What I read is that men live longer with their wives, but wives live less with their men. So I think that's an important aspect. So our next speaker is Janet Torge. Sorry, my glasses. She wears the hats of a television documentary producer, bookkeeper, archivist, and prenatal teacher. And in past careers, she's been a radio talk show host and traffic reporter. Impressive. Montreal Gazette columnist, author, and co-founder of the first rape relief center in Canada. Radical Resthomes, that's where she belongs to, was conceived some 30 years ago when she and her friends watched their parents age and wanted to avoid seniors' residences like the plague. Very nice. The vision has changed and Janet has aged, not so much, but she never lost sight of the idea that aging doesn't have to take place in an institution. So I think it's a nice follow-up of the previous talk.
Thank you. I actually deal with a particular group of seniors. I call them baby seniors. but they're seniors from about the age of, I would say, 60, 65 to about 75. And this is the fast growing group that they talk about, the tsunami of seniors that's coming down the pike. And we now outnumber the youngins. The thing about it is that it's not just about the numbers. We're talking a sea change here. Let me see if I can get going here. Is this it? That's not it. Okay, let's try again. This one. We are not our parents. This is a new generation of seniors. They came from the protest hippie culture. They don't always accept things the way they are. You might have noticed this. And old age will not be any different for them. We are also living longer than any generation in history. These numbers are baffling, but I'm going to give them to you anyway. In 2016, there were 8,230 Canadians over the age of 100. There was a 40% hike since 2011, and in 2051, I will be 103. There could be 40,000 Canadians who are over the age of 100. So why is this happening? And it's not just medical interventions. We do more exercise. We eat healthier. We keep mentally active, and a lot of us are still working. So how to live longer? There was there just came out this survey. Oh, I'm just bad at this. Okay. Which is one of the things that Satoshi talked about. They came out with a survey. They looked at 7 years of seniors, of their last senior's life, and they found out that the top 2 reasons for us living longer were social integration and close relationships. So, you know, you could be smoking, you could have cardiac problems, but if you don't have people around you, if you have people around you, you have a better chance of staying alive. And this also gives us a new reason why women are living longer than men. We've always known this, right? That the women tend to like grow old and the guys just kind of pass under the bridge. Now, why did this happen? We always thought it was because the men had all the stress at work. And of course, we had no stress at all. But they had all the stress. They had the stress at work. Well, now with this, it shows that one of the reasons that this is happening is because women tend to be chattier. We have more friends. We're nurturing, and our social relationships are much closer. So now the men, you know what to do. So there are more of us. There are more women. There are more loudmouths around, and there are more really old people. So let's look at some of the landscape that we're dealing with here. The pension landscape has changed. A lot of people are freelancers. They're not always people who have kept the same job for 50 years. The pensions that many of us have were organized around 12 years, living 12 years after you retired. Many of us are living 30 and 40 years. So, and a lot of us don't have pensions. So that's the pension landscape. It's a little fragile. Government health care. This is another thing that's going to skyrocket over the next little while. And it doesn't matter how much Pilates you do, you're going to get fragile. The kids are not around to help. A lot of our kids have moved away. They're in other cities, other provinces, even other countries. So we don't have that familiar support group right next door. So the future feels a little wobbly, and not just financially. So radical rest homes is a way to keep the lifestyle that you want to have. There's no reason why just because you're getting older, you have to like change your life and move into an institution. So radical rest homes is for people who don't like senior residences. Hell no, we won't go. These are the people that I'm dealing with. Now, why don't we like senior residences? Let's get right down to it, because it's not just a blanket idea. It's first off a building full of old people. Why are we all in one place? Like, when did this happen, that we have to be put in big towers? They sell them now as hotels and cruise ships, but it's really an institution. Also, I'm sure all of you have been in them before. When you walk in, it's like the energy just gets sucked right out of you. There are no young people there, and you can feel it. And then the other thing is, why do we have to move in with people we don't know when we're older? Like, and we're expected to befriend them. So it's an artificial situation. Also, the care comes from professionals. You're not getting care from the people around you who know you or help with things that you need. And the final thing, they are damned expensive. In Quebec, the low end is about $2,800 a month. And on the high end, the ones you might consider going to are about $6,000 a month. So given all these things, it's very hard not to feel like you're being placed and parked until the end. That's the end of my rant. So now, what kind of change do we need? So everybody's talking now about innovative housing for seniors and alternative housing for seniors, but you got to be careful what makes a real alternative. So in my mind, we manage our own lives, probably in small numbers, not in 300-unit towers. We have contact with all generations. It might be in a home, it might be informal, it might be on the street, it might be in the building, but there is contact with younger people, and they're not just like brought in, for a show and tell and then left. There's back and forth caregiving among friends, among family, and with medical experts. We're not expecting to do our own surgeries, but we do want people to help us with things, and they don't always have to be professionals. There will be less dependence on the medical system. The medical system is going to require this. It's not so much something that, we can promote. We're just going to have to do it because there are going to be so many people that need support and care. And the care in the future should be focused on quality of life, not treatment. For any of you that have read Atul Gawande's book, Being Mortal, if you haven't read it, it's like a game changer, and it's required reading for everybody over 55 as far as I'm concerned. But he talks about choosing what kind of medical intervention that you want, depending on how you want to live. So it might not always be the best medical treatment, because you may be just in bed while the best medical treatment is going on for the next 6 months. So you have to look at what kind of quality of life comes out of the care that you're getting. And then the last thing, we would like to die in our own beds if possible, as opposed to dying in an institution with people that we don't know. There are extra added benefits to all of these things that I've said. One is that home care is cheaper than hospital care, so that's on our side. And shared housing is always cheaper than living alone or in an institution. So we've got those two things on our side when we're fighting. So seniors are really awakening up to these possibilities. There is a beginning of a movement. I can feel it sometimes. Yeah, because I've been yakking about this for the last 5 years. Some people are even getting bored with me, but I'm going to continue. And I've seen alternatives start popping up across the country. In the US and in Europe, it's all started, and it really is everywhere. And as Satoshi said, the key is community. We have to move out of our individual pods or bring people into our pods, but we need to be around support. If we're aging and we're getting fragile, we have to admit that we're going to need some support, and we feel new energy around us. So let's look at some of the alternatives across the country just very quickly. You probably have heard of them. Co-housing. So since I've been looking at this thing, there are now 13 co-housing projects across Canada, with twice that many in development. In the last 2 years, 3 groups have started here in Montreal. So co-housing it's probably the most popular and the one that you hear about the most. The only problem with it, to this point, is that you have to have equity. It's all new construction, so you have to like sell your house to buy into it. In Britain, they do have co-housing with some renters and some people who own their places, but we haven't gotten there yet in Canada. Cooperatives. Cooperatives are, in Quebec, we actually have a strong history of the cooperative movement. And that is, you have your own apartment in a larger sort of residence, or it can be like Milton Park. It can be several apartment houses in a row. Some of the government runs are capped at 25% of whatever you bring in, so that's always good if you don't have a lot of money or you're on a fixed income. They can also be an interesting structure for a group of friends, because there is a cooperative model that is not sponsored by the government. So that's another thing. But that still, you can see they are communities. They're living communities, housing communities. Intentional communities. We used to know them as communes. We've changed the name now. It sounds a little bit more trendy. Intentional communities are people who live together who share a particular value or a particular thing that they want to do. Spiritual communities, green communities, living off the grid communities. And this is something that I hear when I do workshops. I hear a lot of people talking about, you know what, I'm not working now. I would like to be part of some, something that I really believe in. And not just the house, like something I really believe in. Intentional communities are good. We have them in Quebec. Actually, the Baba Yaga house in France is one that you might have heard about. Those are women. Usually, I think most of them are lesbians. They bought this house, this apartment, or they built it in France, and they lived together. This was their project. And then finally, I call it the do-it-yourself projects. These are my favorites. I love these. 5 friends in Gaspé bought a church, and they live there. 3 women sharing in Winnipeg. There's a commune in Mendocino, California that's been going on for 40 years. I mean, you gotta love it. And 4 women who bought a house in Port Prairie, Ontario. So, and like what Satoshi said, if you don't want to leave your house, just get more people to move in with you, and you've got yourself a little do-it-yourself project. Okay, so the big thing is that you have to choose a model that works for you, because not all of us in this room are going to do the same thing. So that's part of what Radical Resthomes does. So we bring people together. We do these workshops, which basically are designed for people to figure out what model works for them. Do you have money? Do you not have money? Do you want to live with older people? Do you want to live with 3 people? Do you want to live with 10 people? Do you want to live with younger people? You have to. This is a very personal thing of how you're going to move forward. We encourage alternatives for low-income and fixed-income seniors. This is one of my big gripes, is that there are lots of alternatives out there, but there's practically nothing if you don't have equity. So that's one of the things that we're working on. We have to make sure that we're prepared to move into the alternative. You can't just start. I tell you, I have housemates. It has not been easy, but it's been great. But we have to prepare ourselves for this. There's decision-making things to figure out. Whose furniture goes in the living room? I mean, these are not little issues. And so we have to start preparing, and Radical Resthomes is hoping to set up some training workshops for that. And we have to keep in touch with each other so that people can find the kind of model that they want. So all these different alternatives have to start talking with each other. So let's look at the radical, is this it? Oh yeah. Let's look at the radical rest home model, like what we're doing. So we're trying to get our first prototype up and running. Not an easy thing, as Satoshi will tell you. It's really, you can have all the ideas in the world, right? But then people have to actually buy into it and be ready to move. So what we're doing is we have a couple of things a couple of sort of standards that we're sticking by no matter what anybody says. The first one is that we're going to use existing buildings, big houses that are stalled on the market. That we have a lot of these in Montreal. Remember when there used to be big families, 6, 7 kids? Well, the people who had money had these beautiful houses with 6 or 7 bedrooms, and now nobody wants them. They're too small for condos. They're too big for a family. You're not going to put students in them. So, I mean, they just sit there. So we've got our eye on those. We're going to do home share rentals, so no equity is needed. We're looking at very small groups, like 6, 7, 8 people living together. And we also recognize that housing is more than just people in a building. The challenge of matching people is not a small one. And just because we're all over 70 doesn't mean we can live together. I mean, there's got to be something else. So we have come up with this thing. We call it housing with purpose. And it is multi-generational because most of the people we talk to, that's what they want. So what we're going to do is each house will have a project that they manage together. So for those people who want to give back to the community, maybe this house would have like 5 seniors in it and an immigrant or refugee family, so that they would help each other. The seniors would help the immigrant and refugee family adapt to life in Canada. We could have senior artists living with younger artists, and they could share their talents. We can have seniors who were entrepreneurs or set up their own business living with younger people who want to do the same thing, and there will be a mentorship going back and forth. And then there's the pet lovers living with the student veterinarians. I mean, anyway, you can go on forever like this. So the idea is that people are living together for a purpose. It's sort of like a very small intentional community living together. The other problem that it solves, which we saw early on, is that if you have seniors living together home sharing, the people in the house only change when one dies or one has to be moved out for care. This is a negative reason to start looking for other residences. So if you're doing something with younger people, if there's a mentoring thing going on, an immigrant family, the residence changes when something good has happened as well, when the immigrant family has found a place to live, when the student entrepreneurs have started their own business and they move out. So that has a positive effect on that house. So these are the things that we're looking at. The possibilities of these purpose houses are endless. And the other thing it does is it kind of kicks some excitement into the last chapter of your life. You can be creative, you can make your own decisions, you can choose a lifestyle that suits you and not others. So, just so you know, the government and the developers are now building large towers to warehouse all of us coming down the pike as we grow to this 25% of the population. So, if you don't want to go, Let us choose. Connect with your inner pushy self and insist on a different way and join the movement. Thank you.
Our last speaker is Arseli Dokumaci. She's an assistant professor of critical disability studies and media technologies here at Concordia University at the Community Studies Department, and her research focuses on disability, performance in media with an emphasis on affordance theory, everyday practices, activism, visual ethnography, and, my colleague, anthropology of medicine. And she's currently working on her monograph, Microactivist Affordances, an ecological approach to disability and performance.
Thank you. I will actually leave this very lovely home sharing environment and temporarily institutionalize myself and get back to here later on. I would like to thank you. Can everybody hear me, by the way? Is my sound coming all the way? Good, perfect. I would like to thank, first of all, the organizers of Bold event for this very generous invitation. It's really an honor to be here today, and I would like to thank also my fellow presenters for their wonderful talks. So I will begin with this image you're seeing on the screen. Here we see a drawing of someone's upper body. The person's arms and elbows are bent toward their belly, as if they are about to engage in an action. The title says, The Art of Sitting Up. This is a drawing I made illustrating an ordinary moment from my everyday life, where I have to continuously ask myself, how can I get this simple task done with the least amount of pain possible and by minimizing the use of my impaired joints? Now, everyday life is full of such calculations for me because since my teenage years, I live with a chronic illness which is affecting my joints, causing pain and gradual and hence invisible disablement. Now that is because the disease affects the joints, and joints mean movement, your everyday life turns into a stage where you have to continuously choreograph the dance of avoiding pain. Now, all disabled and aging people, we all have our highly ingenious choreographies just to get by the everyday. For instance, just in order to open a water bottle, you can take the water bottle, bite the cap, and rip it off with your mouth. Or just open light switches. You can open it with your elbows, or you can open them even with your head like this. So what I will be now talking about is exactly such creative movements that are buried in the most unnoticeable moments of everyday life. Something that I have been theorizing as microactivist affordances. Now, the theory of microactivist affordances emerges out of a 10-year intellectual process and experiential process as well. In this period, I have completed 2 visual ethnographies, one in Turkey and Quebec, and here I work with people who have invisible disabilities related to rheumatoid arthritis. I visited my participants at their homes, interviewed and filmed them as they performed very simple daily tasks, such as buttoning a shirt. The second ethnography took place in Montreal, and here I followed 3 differently disabled individuals as they moved through the public places of this highly inaccessible city. And it is through this ethnographic process of thinking through and living with disability that I have to come to develop a theory of microactivist affordances. Now, the original theory, this idea of affordances, does not come from me. It's developed by an ecological psychologist called James Gibson. And James Gibson, just to give a brief idea, uses the term to refer to action possibilities emerging from the mutuality of organism-environment relations. So, for instance, upon seeing a rigid, knee-high surface, I do not only see the surface, but also the possibility of sitting embodied in its material. So, affordances, in Gibson's definition, refer to such possibilities of action, the actualization of which depends upon the properties of an organism and those of the environment. They have to complement, okay? But different from Gibson, what I propose to do with my theory is this. Let's look at when that organism-environment mutuality, that supposed complementarity, cannot be readily found in the given order of things, and what happens thereafter. Let's look at when a surface does not readily afford sitting, or a mug does not readily afford easily drinking from, and what happens thereafter. Because my argument is that whether disability is caused by a barrier or chronic illness, ableism, or a combination of all, which is usually the case, disability is experienced as a shrinking of the environment and its available affordances. In fact, I propose that disability can ecologically be defined as a narrowing down of the environment and its existing affordances. But then what happens in those moments of shrinking? And this is the question I want to ask. Now, in order to find out, I'm going to show some examples from my ethnographic fieldwork in Turkey and in Quebec. And you will see my participant with invisible disabilities performing a series of daily tasks. And I would like to ask you to refrain from taking any photos, just to respect the privacy of the participants. And can we play the video, please? Thank you.
I love meat a lot. I eat a lot less than before, but I asked Brian before, if I order this, are you gonna help me? And if I'm here and I have a really hard time and Brian's not there, I just take the whole thing and go like that. Yeah.
Önceden 3-4 düğmesini, ilk 2-3 düğmesini ya da son bir düğmeyi açık bırakıyorum sadece. Kazak şeklinde gelir mesela. Daha kullanıyorum böyle. Başım çıkacak şekilde olduktan sonra kazak gibi. Yani sökeceğim diye uğraşmam geldiğim zamanlarda. Yani işten geldiğim zamanında.
Rahatsızken saçlarımı tutuyordum, başımı eğiyordum kara. Yani kolum kalkıp ve destek koluma böyle tarıyordum.
I don't bring that elbow to the same level as the table, it's gonna drop. It's gonna go like this. So it's gotta bring down the elbow to put the cup on the table.
Perché Easy se oui, y tiene que ser capaz de trabajar con ese material. Je peux faire ici.
No, już pokiera.
Here is very useful because you can have it large or small. Okay.
Mesela o gün 2 dizim ağrıyordu. Burayı tutuyorum. Böyle bak şimdi. Böyle önce şunları buraya koymaya çalışıyorum. Sonra yani bir türlü şuradan kalk. Buna destek olum yok. Buna döndüm. Burada da bileğim ağrıyor. Bileğimle kuvvet vermem lazım.
Sehpayı önüne getirsen şöyle.
Yok işte kalkamadım siz
Şöyle.
içeride maç izlerken.
Şöyle.
İşte böyle öyle mümkün değil kalkamadım. En şeyi böyle şimdi bugün tabii kalkamıyorum. Şöyle yaptım o gün. Ondan sonra yani yapamadım. Önce böyle bir türlü bu dizimi döndüremedim. Ondan sonra buradan şu dizimden kuvvet aldım. Böylece kalktım yani.
You know, you're only standing on one leg, so instead of doing this, watch your head, but go down like this, like you would sit in a chair, and then rotate and bring both your feet in. And again, when you go out of the car, Instead of trying to go out only on one leg, bring both legs out. Then help yourself. Help yourself to get out the car. If you have problem with your knees, help yourself. Grab the door. Grab something. Help yourself. You get the dashboard. You get.
Ama inerken böyle yapıyorum, böyle yapıyorum ki hareket edeyim. Herkes bana kızıyor. Sen efendim kendini eziyet ediyorsun. Nasıl eziyet etmeyeyim ki ben bu hareketi yapmayacağım? Sonra kalkarken de böyle, bak bu elim bak böyle. Böyle yapmıyorum bak böyle. Böyle. Buna basıyorum ama. Bak bunu sağlam tutuyorum. Bu sakatı.
Öyle kalkıyorsunuz.
Tabii.
Bir de 5 rekat kılıyor musunuz böyle?
Tabii.
Abdest alabiliyorsunuz.
Bu bacağımı tutuyorum. Kalkmadık geçen gün. De tuttum. Aşağıdan böyle kaldım. Yıkamaya kalktım bunu.
Öyle mi yıkadın?
Valla böyle yıkadım ya.
Evde.
Kimse inanmaz buna tabii.
Now we will go back to the slides. Thank you. There we are. So we have seen some ingenious ways of getting ordinary tasks done. Previously, I proposed that disability is experienced as the inaccessibility or the unavailability of the world's existing affordances. But now I want to add, precisely at such moments of shrinking, something else happens. When existing offerings of the environment, its objects, buildings, infrastructures, technologies, leave no room for our aging and non-standard bodies and minds, when the world becomes most unresponsive to the impairments, illnesses, and pains we live with, it is the space of performance that opens up to make the environment afford otherwise. So, just as actors on stage, we enter the stage of everyday life and make it afford action possibilities that it did not initially seem to afford. Such as this moment of buttoning a shirt, where my participant bends, squeezes, and twists the fabric, instead of obeying the functional demands of a tiny button and bending her inflamed fingers. Now, drawing on these ethnographic moments, I argue the following. Upon facing the limits of what the environment currently affords, disabled people may begin moving, sensing, and behaving in such ways that they get to invent affordances unimaginable otherwise. Affordances within which their aging and disabled bodies would be best reciprocated by their environment. And it is exactly to these anarchic improvisations, inventive choreographies, and ingenious hacks that I refer to as microactivist affordances. I define microactivist affordances as unfinished, ephemeral acts of world building with which disabled people literally make up and at the same time make up for whatever affordance that fails to readily materialize in their environments. So, microactivist affordances bring accessible futures into life, as if they already existed in the present, as if they were of the here and now. I argue this because in this image you see on the screen, none of my interlocutors in this particular image had either access to or even knew of such assistive technologies that you're seeing here again. And yet they were able to imagine the very affordances of these tools in and through their performances. And this is exactly why I call these affordances as activists. It is through such transitionary, improvised, and almost unnoticeable acts of world building that we bring accessible futures and accessible worlds into life. But we do so within the temporality of performance and without a solid claim on what those worlds should be or look like. Of course, we cannot understand what could possibly be activist about these affordances if we limit our understanding of activism to freedom from barriers and fight for civil rights. Or if we think of activism only in terms of taking up to the streets with highly visible and celebratory activities, something May Chisen was also taking to task yesterday. But if we think of activism as acts of world making and bringing multiple possibilities of action into life, then these affordance creations count very much so as forms of activism. Microactivist affordances thus invite us to question what we mean by activism, who gets to do it and how, and which acts get to count as activism and why. In this mode of activism that I have been showing you, demands for change are not said out loud. They are ephemeral, almost invisible, and perhaps even unintentional. They are performed as an affordance that is always in movement towards the more accessible forms that it is yet to take. And this is all the more reason why such micro-improvisations and creations deserve our attention. And this is why I propose a theory of microactivist affordances. And thank you.
Beautiful talks. I'm really impressed by this panel. And maybe if I just wrap up quickly, I think we have 3 messages here that are, and I think everybody here in this room will agree that aging in place is better than institutions, intergenerational is better than only among older people, and loneliness is bad. And you probably all know that in England now they have a Ministry of Loneliness, which shows the importance that this question is getting, and maybe also that a certain medicalization will come with it in the future. So pharma industry is preparing for loneliness pills, and they're study. But can we also question this? Not question as not being true, but maybe look at a different perspective regarding this. If we look at aging in place, because that is a comment that everybody agrees. And when I did a research with my colleague Nancy Guberman, it was everybody was saying that we looked at people that were, already quite sick, so they had to think about what to do, stay at home or not, and everybody was saying institution. No, even people who never went into an institution, it was like this big horror film at the horizon that was threatening them. So even if the house was not good for them, they wanted to stay at home. And in this project, I also interviewed some architects who made institutions. And there was one who said she made institutions up with the Inuit people in the north. And she said, different from here, where everybody wants to have his private room or her private room, they want to have community rooms. So the basic thinking of aging in place is completely different. And I grew up, as I said, in Germany, and many mothers or fathers of my friends, they went to institutions in Germany way before they got older, saying, well, I want to make new friends. But institution, at least at that time, this has really changed because Germany is getting more and more neoliberal like most other countries. But institutions are mostly apartments where you have your privacy. And but when you get sick, there's someone to clean. So it feels actually you have more liberty and not less. While in Montreal, in our interviews, people said exactly the opposite. They said, well, they wake you up at 5 o'clock and you have to have breakfast at 7, and so you don't have choice. So I think the basic thinking under it, we can change perspectives. So we could do the same with, is intergenerational always better? Most of my friends are more or less my age, older, younger. Why not move in with older people? So I think we can change perspective a little bit. And so I just want to pass this here to the panelists and see what they think about that.
Well, I start just because they gave the microphone to me as first, but well, intergenerational doesn't set in my mind a specific path. I'm 28 and it would be lovely for me probably to live with someone that is older and had completely different experience from the one I had in my life. But I also understand that it's not like for everyone. There are limits. Everyone has its own limits, so you have to choose also the kind of generation. Maybe it's closer to what you think and what you want from that kind of relationship, in my opinion. But for the homeshare project, as we always say, we start with a combination students, seniors, because we are from Concordia University and the Concordia Student Union. But obviously, this is open. Our idea is to open this model to every kind of combination. So there's not one type of intergenerational bridge and community building. It depends, I think, on the one closest to you and your plans.
I would like to say that I think numbers are important here. Like, it's hard for me to imagine any kind of supportive community in a tower with 300 units. And I just can't see it, you know? And there is a point at which, and I don't know what that number is, but I would say over 50 or 60, it's going to be hard to generate some kind of community, people knowing each other, whether they have their own places or community places or not. The other thing that I think is a problem is that there's, in new construction, there's efficiency of scale. So you don't hear about people building 3 or 4 floors of 20. You don't hear it because efficiency of scale says that if the developer who's ever building it is going to make money, they have to do the 200 units. So this is my problem. That is what makes an institution to me, are the numbers of people that are supposed to interact. I mean, maybe you could do it by floor, but still, it just doesn't have a feeling of community.
But I think there we get back to the point I wanted to make. In Germany, there are often small buildings in a park. So it's the image is totally different from these towers, this horror image that you make. So no, I think maybe we have to rethink certain things.
But you don't make money off those small things.
But we have to think social. Like
we can think social, but the people that build don't think so. I mean, we have to get builders who have social community on their minds. That's what I'm saying. And the government, but even the innovative housing from CMHC, you know, they're new. Everybody's going to have a house by 2036, and you know, and we're all about affordable housing for seniors. When you look at the projects that they're funding, you know, out in Alberta, 250 shipping tanks, or you know, those shipping containers, but it's 250. It's not 10. It's not 20. Anyway, I get kind of angry about this. I will stop now.
Thank you for the great summary. I'd like to share with another crazy idea I have. I think existing houses are outmoded. What we need is that everybody has to have tiny house. Do you know those tiny homes? Yeah. Because it's cheaper to make, and I think high school students have to build their own tiny home, and then they're going to live in that forever. Now the community is built by creating the common space, and then these homes will dock to really have access to the common space. And then like you create a nice atmosphere in your neighborhood, and then you can cultivate the surrounding area. Or if you don't like the people, you can move on to another one. And in the city, we have, instead of the big tall buildings, we have a big tall parking garage. Now each floor of this parking could be like a tiny home space put together. So you can have a different setting. And I think this could be really great. Why? Because housing costs would be lowered. You live in your home in your entire life. And if you want to really move to Florida, you just hold your tiny home. I think this is a very kind of my utopian idea. But this could really be made for the couple or a triple or different arrangement of the homes, so that you don't need to really have this fixed real estate idea that you have to choose one place and then move on and so forth. Anyways, that's another crazy idea I want to throw you.
Well, now that the crazy ideas are coming along, there's another project by, since that we started talking about tiny houses, by a Chilean artist about half houses that are actually half built. And this was done to accommodate the working class people who have been displaced from their environments because of gentrification. And the half houses is like allowing them for much cheaper prices than the renovated old condos and everything, which they can build the other half up to their what they can afford and in their own means. But about the tiny houses, I have a little challenge. I find them incredibly inaccessible. I would not want to live in a tiny house. So it's important to think about when we are thinking about future solutions. And I think it's a wonderful idea to take up less space, but to think of other considerations and how we can find a compromise of all needs. And another thing that comes to my mind is about this home sharing idea, which is wonderful. And I think I will be very happy to live there. And and because I think what's so great about this idea and your project is that it's not only unsettling the idea of aging people as frail and dependent and insufficient. You know, it's challenging those ideas, but it is at the same time challenging, in my opinion, the idea of the youth as being youthful and independent and efficient and always on the rise and always can do things on their own. No, youth is not like that all the time. Let me break the news. As a person prematurely aging, I feel very at home with aging people. I feel very good to walk at their pace, and you know, I don't have to rush to, you know, catch up with my peers because they sometimes forget that I don't walk as fast. And I feel that very at home when, you know, we can do day-to-day tasks together with them, you know, see their inventions and what we can exchange about our affordance inventions. So I find it very prolific environment as from an intergenerational aspect.
So maybe a second provocation, just a tiny one, about aging in place. In the interviews I did with my colleague Nancy Guberman, it came also out, they not only tell you what to do in this institution, which were often fiction because people never have seen an institution, but they also said they're only old people. So that would actually play into the intergenerational. So older people desire to have younger people. But when you asked, if you get deeper in it, it was not older people per se, because all their neighbors, their friends, they are more or less the same age, as I said before. But it was because of disease and sadness, disassociation. So actually older people have often very negative images about other older people. And Chaim Hassan, who's an Israeli researcher, quite radical, who I like a lot, and he made an ethnography in an English nursing home, and there were different different floors, and where the people were more disabled, they were completely isolated. And also when people started to become disabled, people wanted them to get off their floor, so they were not confronted. So I think there is an ageism also among ageism, and I think that's a point that is interesting to discuss within this general discussion of intergeneration. What do you think?
Okay, well, first of all, I don't know how are this kind of institution in Germany, because the ones in Italy are definitely on the wrong side, for what I know, at least. I think also the decision behind these kind of facilities are different from culture to culture and country to country. Personally speaking, in Italy, for example, it's the only country I know that well to speak about. When a family, because it's a family decision, when a family decides that the senior one needs to go in such a place, usually it's for disease reason. And I can tell you there is never an easy decision for mainly two reasons. First is your family, so you don't feel that good in suggesting such idea. And second, because your grandma or your grandpa at hearing such a thing will shout at you everything in whatever dialect they speak. So that's the first thing to consider. But the idea behind it, and even the one that I have, and I'm not old or with preconstructed stereotypes, is just, it's a place considered kind of, I don't know, store. It's kind of medical store for old people with disease. At least that's the perception that we are given, especially, I repeat, in Italy. Listening from you and from the rest of you, and also the interventions of yesterday,
The main thing is old people can being kind of discriminative with other older people because they don't want to be compared with that. If I can, again, quote my personal experience, my grandmother used to tell me that as long as your brain works, there's no need for anything else. So for her, the idea of going in such a facilities because her body was not functioning that well was the biggest shame and trauma, probably. So that's the thing, because she was considering people in these facilities like less than her somehow. So it's a discrimination that exists. And it's also bunches of time the resistance that young people have in facing what it can be, because yes, I'm 28, everything is super cool right now, my tattoos and my piercing, but then at some point I will age and things will not be this cool. But the idea of facing it and seeing how nowadays we treat this condition at the end, we can say this part of the life, probably we don't like it, and because we don't want to face it, we also avoid sometimes the connection with people staying in those facilities. And it's really sad, first of all, because we are all aging, and second of all, because this is not how I would like to age. I don't want to wake up in my 80s and being alone in a facility because whatever happened. I would like to wake up in my 80s and knowing that, okay, my body is not the same when I was 20, but it's not too bad. I can still manage and not feel that kind of old inside, because for whoever is aging over the 55 as here is considered aging in Montreal or in Canada, as long as you feel young, as long as you can feel you're alive and everything is touching you, it's fine. You're not aging, not that bad at least. So don't put a separation between you and the youth, and don't accept it, especially because, as you said, we are not always able to do everything, or we are not that independent, and mainly when it's about family, because then we miss them a lot.
I think another point to make on this one is that, at least in Canada, when we get more fragile, we turn to the medical field. Like, there's a lot of things that happen to our bodies that we need support that can come from friends or family. It doesn't always have to be medical, traditional medical help. So that's one of the differences, I think. And I think that we're only beginning to see this. You know, I think this is part of a new aging idea that, you know, we don't always have to run to a doctor for everything. But the other thing is that there is, like, as I age, it's very hard for me to live with the fact that I can't remember everything. I'm so excited when a young person can't remember my name. I think this is like wonderful because I'm constantly, you know, like, I meet somebody, I know them well, I can't remember their name, I think it's going to fall from the sky, it doesn't fall from it's just we have no sort of ways of dealing with this. We're all dealing with it individually. We don't like go up and say, "Hi, I'm Janet," so that the other person doesn't have to go through hell in their mind about who I am. We haven't created these things. So there is a distance between a person who's aging and a person who still has their mind. So these are the things, we have to look at some of these things in order to bridge that gap, because there is a gap, and, you know, it's there for a reason. There is stuff going on.
If you don't mind, we will pass now to the audience. I'm sure you have lots of questions, and Ash will come with a microphone.
I'm not encouraging running. I just want to make it to you.
Can you just have your hand up one more time?
In the meantime, I'd like to say thanks to the translators and interpreters and those people who are signing. Why? Because very good.
First, Bassam Abdelrazak. I am professor at the University of Sherbrooke. I'm working IoT and technology, but here my question is not about technology. Actually, when listening to what you are saying, I was thinking about our society. We live on our society where our personal space, we keep tightening it from being kid. We have to perform. When we grow up, we want our like house. When we have more money, we want to create bigger house, but for our own personal family. At the beginning, we don't accept others. When we get married, the first year is very horrible. We have to accept each other. After that, we get kids, but our kids, it's ours. That means we accept them, no problem. But this is because our society. If we look at other societies, for example, we are talking about Italy, Spain, Greece, this personal space is more larger. Like we accept grandma to come to our house and keep talking, keep introducing to our life. When looking at the home sharing project, really it's a very interesting idea. I think even for aging people, it's gonna give like more openness for social life. But I would like to see your like thought about this personal space over culture and how this can be helpful for you. For example, if you wanna look for people who are more from maybe rural first rather than from the city, that can help you like to share their apartment or your house. Thank you.
Thanks to you. So if we are talking about the homeshare program, I have to tell you, because I didn't tell you before, that we are also organizing a long process of interviews and matchmaking, because different cultures are great, but if you're not Italian, the idea of having all my family coming, visiting me, and entering in the house is not fun. Absolutely. No, you don't want to have my parents inside your house. I can tell you that. So the point is the cultural thing, it's important. And in our view of this project, there will be a really long part about who are you? How do you feel? What are the things you prefer to do? What are the things that you cannot stand at all because really it just blows up your mind? This kind of thing. And also a period of meeting and getting to know each other in a kind of neutral zone. So let's meet all for a coffee. So you with those 3-4 students that potentially are closer to you. The idea is to also not only be intergenerational, but intercultural. It can be, absolutely, but we have to remember that there are things in a culture that are super polite and elegant to do and say, and things in another culture and the same things in another culture can be a really huge offense or something like this. So there are many little things that will need to work, and for make it work, the only option we have is to spend with people the most time possible, getting to know them, and them to getting to know the rest of the project and the idea behind. Because it's easy to say, oh yeah, it's a program about low rent or no rent even, creating a new social situation between seniors and students, but then you have to do it. And it depends on a lot of things, so.
And just, sorry, this is just Ash speaking, just because we're running just a little bit of time, if it's okay with the panelists, if maybe one other person can respond, and then we'll just move to the next question just to give a little bit more space to the audience. And I'll do the best I can, audience, to give space to everyone. Thanks.
Can I just respond?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to limit that. So sorry.
Have you ever heard of non-violent communications, NDC? That's really important. I work in the transition NDG as my kind of another life. And I was exposed to NVC, or compassionate conversation. That is, you have to really develop empathy first to yourself. You have to embrace you and acknowledge your feelings and emotions and be nice to you, because we are told by the capitalist system, critical to yourself, be independent, don't rely upon anybody. I went through the good training by my wife. I am now a very good behaving husband. But then I have to be a good community people to other people too. So we need to train each other, train ourselves to be nice. In a way, this is an art of creating the kin friendship in between the kin and then friends, but then be more empathetic and then sympathetic and have more embracing attitude. I think this is the kind of a very important ingredients, and our educational institutions like university can be really gearing toward creating empathetic society and community. And like we have to really cleanse ourselves with this competitive capitalist mindset.
Hello. Yeah. So I work in urban research, and this conference has been one of the greatest conferences that I have attended. And of course, the value system and all the consideration and implications in the design of homes and housing and environments for the elderly, and the situation now on how we're going to adapt economically to integrating them into the society is really a challenge. But I lived in Vancouver. I really appreciated the second conference. The lady, I forgot the lady's name. Yes, I really appreciated your conference. I lived in Vancouver, and for a bit when I left my husband, I have an aunt who's very Americanized, immigrant, and I lived in a housing project. It was a subsidized housing project. They were small. It was marvelous. I felt like I was a multimillionaires. It was a little townhouses stuck together, one by one, and they formed a sort of a circle around a common area. And in the common area, the residents with their families would meet. Some were painting on easels. So they had a community going, and they only paid 25% of their income. It was a beautiful, beautiful housing project. And of course, the people that are living off the grid, you mentioned the different categories of housing off the grid, but the new movement now is to get out of the city, and there's a lot of people who are concerned about the environment and ecology and different environmental sensibilities. And many people are buying plots of land outside the city and are living in sort of environmentally friendly. And there's even in Ottawa, I visited a community that they don't allow petroleum cars into the community. It's off a mountain, off a lake, and there's no petroleum cars that are allowed into the community. There we go.
The one thing that I really like about what's going on now is that people are coming up with very creative ideas. And, you know, like, I mean, we're doing one thing, you're doing another thing. I mean, we're trying to, I guess we've come to the fact that this idea of nuclear family living in their own house or apartment, you know, it might have been fun for a while, but it doesn't work throughout a person's entire life. And so, and, you know, given what's happening in the world too, the environment in that, we have to figure out new ways of living together. I think one of the things that bothers me a bit, and maybe it shouldn't bother me, maybe it's okay, but I don't see the government or, you know, people that have the money on the bandwagon. Like, they could also invest in some of these new ideas that are coming down the pike. You know, even if they're not going to make a lot of money out of it, it can be like their social investment. Because I think we need a lot of these different things. We're all different kinds of people. We need all different kinds of situations, and people are coming up with them. So I'm with you. I think that, you know, there have to be many, many different kinds of things.
Sorry, we're gonna, if it's okay, we'll take maybe one more question quickly. So I just asked the person, I think you had one, ma'am. Yeah, I'll just pass the mic. Just be concise, that'd be so appreciated.
Thanks everybody. Oh, okay, I'm going to sit like this. My name is Paula Negron. I'm a professor in urban planning at the University of Montreal. So I work a lot with the housing for seniors and mainly the location of the housing. So I like Ms. Janet presentation a lot. Just wanted to say something. In Montreal, we have a huge market, and a huge market means huge buildings. But when in our research we're doing in smaller cities like Joliet, Trois-Rivières, Shawinigan, the housing market for seniors, it takes another very, very different form. We're talking about buildings less than 100 units, buildings that look a lot like any regular building. And one thing that people living there told us is that what's important for them is that's not too big, so it looks like a family home, even if it's not the family one, but it looks like. And the second thing is that they say it's important for us to choose when to move here, but sometimes people move too late. Too late, they move too late in the senior house, and when they cannot live in their own house anymore. So by doing that, it becomes a very bad situation, a very bad experience. And what seniors told us is that if you're going to move to a senior house, do it before you start having these health issues. Move it before so you can enjoy your time there. Of course, there's an accommodation time, but for some seniors living those places, the majority of seniors we spoke to, they seem pretty comfortable in those places. But again, it's not those big 300 units things. Why are there 300 units? Well, that's another issue. But when resident housing for seniors are smaller, they are located in the neighborhoods where they used to grow up. Seniors are living there are just fine. At least that's what they told us. Thank you.
Okay, so we have unfortunately no more time. I thank the panelists for their wonderful, wonderful presentations. Also, the translators and Ash for assistance.
And I just do want to apologize. I realize so many people had questions, and I understand that this is a very important issue. What I would encourage for people to do is maybe some of the panelists could come to the back of the space, or some people could come to the front just because of different access needs, so that those questions can get addressed, and there will be opportunities in other panels to hopefully feed in these issues. And thank you so much for your patience.
We break? No. Mike? Break now for half an hour. There's coffee in the lobby out there. Please continue the conversation. We'll come back at 11:30 for the keynote.